Denis Villeneuve's Dune Part 3 has just been showcased at CinemaCon during the Warner Brothers panel with the director and cast in attendance, and the early descriptions of footage promise an action-packed final part in the auteur filmmaker's Dune trilogy. The event, for those who went, included the first 7 minutes of the film, plus a couple of extra minutes of footage from other parts of the movie, and also some additional shared details. Now, although I can't share any footage because none of it has been officially released online, there is a detailed description of what was shown on screen, so I can talk about that and share everything else that was discussed at the event. But before I get into my breakdown, if you want to keep up to date on any of my content surrounding Dune Part 3, then don't forget to support this upload by giving it a like rating, subscribing to the channel, and turning on your notifications. But without further ado, let's discuss the 10 minutes of footage seen at CinemaCon for Dune Part 3. So director Denis Villeneuve is set to release Dune Part 3 this December, and hot on the heels of the amazing trailer we got a couple of weeks back, the filmmaker and members of his cast attended yesterday's CinemaCon experience with an extended look at the upcoming science fiction epic. The footage included the first 7 minutes of the film, a few additional scenes, and some extra details shared by director Denis Villeneuve, and stars Timothée Chalamet, Zendaya, and Jason Momoa. Starting with the details shared by the cast, Villeneuve opened the discussion, teasing that Part 3 will take the story in a new direction. He said, "I didn't want to walk in my own footsteps, and I wanted to do something new." The filmmaker describes the new film as an action thriller, saying it's more action-packed, faster-paced, and even more emotional. He also said that it was quite emotional for him to bring back the cast one last time and say farewell to Paul and Chani in the desert. He said, "We became like a small family, and this was 10 years of our life." He then concludes his speech by saying that Paul is wrestling with the things he's caused, and it's still a love story between him and Chani. Actor Timothée Chalamet then joined the conversation and noted that he grew up on the set of these films and called it a deep honour, if not the biggest honour, to work with director Denis Villeneuve. He reiterated that the film picks up 17 years after the prior installment, rather than the 12 years of the Dune Messiah book, and said that Paul has become his worst vision. He said that Paul's struggling to retain the parts of himself he sees the most and still trying to protect his family while becoming the Dark Emperor. We then got some final comments from actress Zendaya and actor Jason Momoa, with the former saying that the years past have not been kind to any character. And then Jason Momoa reiterates that he's playing the character Hate in the film, the Gola resurrected from Duncan's cells as a gift to Paul Atreides to see how it rattles him. But that was really all that the director and his cast had to say about the film, as those in attendance found out that they were about to see the first 7 minutes of Dune Part 3. Coming to that footage, many who were in attendance described the opening of the film as one that evokes the brutal beach scene at the start of Saving Private Ryan. It apparently opens with a bloody battle sequence set on a rainy planet, with Emperor Paul's Fremen army led by Javier Bardem's Stilgar. According to a description by the Hollow-Files on X, the movie begins with a thumping sound that accompanies the Warner Brothers logo and the opening credits. We are then plummeted into space as ships that look like black rectangles descend through a thunderstorm and toward a planet. A lightning storm rages on and strikes a number of the ships down. And inside the ships are numerous soldiers, including Javier Bardem's Stilgar and Farouk, a character known from Dune Messiah. The description says that Stilgar appears committed to the mission, although his facial expressions suggest a man that may harbour some regret over his dedication to Paul Atreides. The soldiers then discuss a miracle that water falls from the sky, hopefully prophesying their victory in the forthcoming battle. They then begin to chant the war cry that was heard and went viral in the first official trailer. And when the remaining ships land on the grey rainy planet and as the ramps open, the soldiers are surprised and delighted to see that water is descending from the sky above. Led by Stilgar, various units of the Fremen soldiers proceed forward across a barren field before they suddenly halt. Stilgar immediately tells everyone to get down, after which a las gun starts firing at them. Some of the soldiers are destroyed immediately, and others are launched into the air. The weapon is described as massive and loud, the soldiers desperately seek cover, and Stilgar manages to get his hands on a massive weapon of his own to fight back against the enemy. He says to his Fremen that they will need to shoot 3 blasts at the enemy's weapon in order to disable its shield. Stilgar proceeds to do this, only to see his blasts bounce off the shield and come back towards him and the Fremen. Within all this, the Fremen warrior Farouk is injured, one soldier deserts his comrades, and the scene comes to an end. Now, I did mention in my previous videos on the trailer that was released the other week that because of the amount of Holy War footage we are seeing from Dune Part 3, that Villeneuve might attempt one of 2 approaches with the narrative structure of his film. Either he is giving us an extended first act set on the Holy War, or he is taking an approach where there are 2 timelines that are intercut throughout the course of the film. One would detail and show important moments from the Holy War that add context to the stuff happening later. And then that later timeline would be set around the events of Dune Messiah 17 years after. And in hearing about this extended opening scene set during the Holy War, I think it looks like he is actually going down the second path. So we'd essentially see important moments from the Holy War play out over the course of the film that frames what happens 17 years later in Messiah. And in getting an introduction to the character of Farouk, that definitely seems to be the case, as he is someone in Messiah who details the effects that this Holy War had on certain Fremen. Another thing I want to mention in hearing this description of the footage is that I think we could be seeing in this opening scene either the conquest of Naraj or the conquest of Eimfell, important moments from the Holy War that are mentioned in the Messiah book. The conquest of Naraj is particularly a resonant moment because of the character of Farouk, who is someone that embodies the human cost of Paul's empire. In the book, Herbert deliberately keeps Naraj's fall at a distance, and it's mentioned in fragments and treated like a footnote in the chronicles of the Holy War. But through his retelling of the war in the book, Farouk provides a level of emotional weight and moral texture from all the aftermath. Naraj itself is one of the many worlds that resisted the spread of Muad'Dib's religion and eventually paid the price for it. So opening the film with a moment like this can help frame the deeper moral complexities of the Messiah book and how that is all set in place 17 years later. And it can also help frame the background of a Fremen character like Farouk, who is going to be a more important element of the film. On top of the opening 7 minutes of the film that was screened though, at the end of the Dune panel, they did show an extra 3-minute montage which featured a couple of additional scenes that we haven't seen or heard about yet. One of the new scenes involves both Chalamet's Paul Atreides and Jason Momoa's Hayt, with Paul asking Hayt what he knows about him and Hayt saying that he's beyond redemption after killing so many. Later in the footage, Paul says to him, "The Atreides family, that's where you come from, I need Duncan, Idaho." Paul then repeatedly shouts "remember" as footage of a sandworm breaches the ground. Now, Paul Atreides' relationship with Hayt in the Dune Messiah book is one of the most quietly devastating dynamics in the entire saga, because it forces Paul to confront the one thing he cannot outthink, outsee, or outmaneuver, and that is the ghost of who he used to be. Hayt isn't just a Gola sent by the Bene Tleilax, as he is the resurrected shape of Duncan, Idaho, the one man Paul loved and trusted without calculation. Every scene between them carries this tension, as Paul is speaking to a friend he mourned, yet that friend has been hollowed out, reprogrammed, and weaponized against him. Their relationship becomes the emotional spine of the novel, a reminder that beneath all the prescience, the Holy War, and imperial machinery, that Dune Messiah is ultimately a story about a man trying to hold on to the last pieces of his own soul. Another scene then flashes on screen during the final montage of footage, and this moment includes Chani looking down at the foreboding tarot cards and asking Paul how it feels to be human despite all of his power. In the Hollywood Reporter article on this footage, they frame this scene as one where Paul confronts Chani in quite a tense moment. So with this description of confrontation, there could be a slight possibility that Chani might actually be the face dancer Scytale. It's more likely just a tense moment between the two of them, but that's an idea that I just wanted to throw out there, especially in knowing about the character of Scytale from the Dune Messiah book. When it comes to Chani looking at the tarot cards though, this is something that we talked about last week when they released the IMAX 70mm trailer with the footage of a bloody Aaliyah Atreides looking at the tarots herself. In the Messiah book, the Dune Tarot acts as a cultural and metaphysical backlash against Paul Atreides' prescience, and after 12 years of his reign, or 17 years in the case of this film, the universe has grown uneasy with a man who can see every branching possibility of the future. The tarot cards are introduced as a kind of psychic smokescreen, a tool that spreads across the Imperium like a fad, but with a deeper, almost insurgent purpose. They create randomness, or at least the illusion of it, in a universe where Paul's vision has become suffocatingly deterministic. The Bene Gesserit, the Spacing Guild, and the Seilaxu all quietly encourage their spread because the tarot represents a weapon that Paul cannot fully control. So the Dune Tarot is Herbert's way of dramatizing the limits of prescience, with the cards symbolizing humanity's instinctive rebellion against a future that has already been written. The tarot essentially becomes a mirror held up to Paul's rise, reflecting the unintended consequences of prescience. So based on the described footage of Chani looking at the cards herself, it sounds like they are going to have an even bigger presence in the third movie. But finally, the last bit of additional footage that was mentioned was of a moment with Florence Pugh's Princess Irulan covered in mud, adding to the mystery surrounding her released character poster a few weeks back. Now, no scene in Dune Messiah depicts Princess Irulan covered in mud, and nothing in the novel's text really resembles that. What we do know about her character is that she participates in political intrigue, she remains a Bene Gesserit trained aristocrat, and her role is psychological and political rather than physical. So I'm not too sure what is going on in this described footage, but you'd have to guess that Villeneuve is expanding on her character, especially with the role she plays in the books post-Messiah. Maybe she's using the mud for medical recovery, similar to Baron Harkonnen in the previous films. We'll just have to wait and see what that turns out to be, but as a whole, all the additional footage that was shown in the Dune panel does sound very intriguing. But they were all the details surrounding the footage screened for Dune Part 3 at CinemaCon. It sounds like everything that was shown really made a big impression at the event, and I guess that we're going to be getting a lot more footage showcased leading up to this December. But I'm interested to hear what you guys think towards the details of the new footage shared, alongside what personally excites you the most about Villeneuve's upcoming film. So let me know down below in the comment section. For much more videos and breakdowns, then subscribe to the channel and turn on your notifications. Also, if you enjoyed this video, remember to leave a like rating and follow me on social media via the links in the description. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed it. I've been Cortex, and as always, make some noise.